And for anybody who's already jumped in here, one of the things that we want to do, we want to encourage lots of back and forth. We want this to be a conversation. So if you have a question, throw it into the chat. If you have something where you would like to, oops, I just raised my own hand. If you would like to be part of the conversation, either throw it in the chat, raise your hands, I can unmute you, I can bring you into the conversation, all of that. These are always better when we have lots of participation from not just the panelists, but also the attendees. All right, I think we are going to get going. All right, everybody. I am Cliff Judy with Missouri Community College Association, or MCCA. I'm joined today by Jacqueline Ferry of Vantage, Dr. Paula Ruby, Dr. Kelly Fish, and Dr. Melody Philhours of Arkansas State. In higher education, I think we've all been in that situation, whether you are a student or an instructor, where that final project of the semester is going to end up being a 10-page paper, or 15-page paper, or God knows how many pages paper. And then as the instructor, you are in charge of 15 or 20 students times all those pages, and are generally expected to get that grade back into them within a few days, within a week, certainly by the end of the semester. I wanted to find out a little bit more about Vantage. I am, of course, new to MCCA. So about a month or so ago, I jumped into a Zoom with Jacqueline Ferry here with Vantage because I wanted a full rundown, a full run through of what we were going to be talking about here today. And she showed me the software. And I actually, at one point, my wife is also a higher education instructor. And she has done writing intensive classes. And I called her over and I was like, do you have this? Do you guys use this? And I think she actually does use the Vantage software. And she said, oh yeah, it's a godsend. So to that point, we wanted to have both Jacqueline on here to talk a little bit about the software, but also our Arkansas State friends who are joining us today have been doing a lot of research and looking into just how effective programs like this are. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our other panelists.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cliff. That was a wonderful introduction. So we have a slide presentation to kind of walk through how Arkansas State is currently using the platform CorrectEnglish, some really great data and analytics as a result of some pilots that they've conducted. And we'll actually jump live into the platform so that you all can see it firsthand as well. So Dr. Fish, if you want to share your slides, I'll go through the first introductory ones. Perfect.
Good.
All right, perfect, wonderful. So just to give an overview and a scope of what we're going to cover in our presentation, the business school at Arkansas State University piloted Vantage Learning's virtual writing support tool, CorrectEnglish, in their business program for 2 years in the 2020 and 2021 academic year. What a year that was to support and improve their students' writing proficiency. So CorrectEnglish, as you'll see, offers immediate writing support powered by Vantage's patented automated essay scoring engine, IntelliMetric. It also features in-text revision tips, feedback aligned with domains of writing, multilingual and cross-disciplinary writing instruction, and even the ability to virtually collaborate with peers, faculty, and tutors. And Arkansas State provided access to CorrectEnglish to all students in multiple courses in each term, and they also utilized benchmark assessments, which were scored by that IntelliMetric engine to really measure writing improvement. With to their term, CorrectEnglish was used as the treatment. I love that. So this presentation is going to provide you with an overview of their experience using the CorrectEnglish platform and an analysis of the results of the benchmark assessments that they conducted. And it really provides impressive evidence of writing improvement for each term. Next slide. So just to introduce you to the panel, Arkansas State University, it's a public research university founded in 1909. And it's the second largest university in Arkansas. And included from Arkansas State is Dr. Kelly Fish, who is a professor of information system and business analytics. He teaches classes in management information systems, global e-commerce, and artificial intelligence. His research includes applications of AI approaches to foreign market screening, study of success factors and impediments to exporting, as well as global leadership traits. We also have Dr. Paula Ruby, who is a professor in the Department of Information Systems and Business Analytics at ASU, and she's been there for 20 years. Paula has published several articles and written textbooks for microcomputer applications. Most recently, she has co-authored with Dr. Ralph Ruby, Decoding Note-Taking, Abbreviations, and Symbols Using a Mobile Device. We also have Dr. Melody Fillowers, who is a professor in the Department of Management and Marketing at ASU. In addition to teaching marketing, Dr. Fillowers serves as a marketing consultant to business and nonprofit government entities. Prior to joining the ASU faculty, she worked as a radio advertising copywriter. I'll pull that. And then the least impressive person on the panel, me, Jacqueline Ferry. I am regional manager with Vantage Learning. I do have a master's degree in U.S. history and actually taught in the higher education realm for 6 years. And as regional manager with Vantage, we partner with institutions of higher education across the country, implementing CorrectEnglish, IntelliMetric, and we also have assessment tools for high stakes assessment needs. Next slide. So just to give you a little background on Vantage as a company. So Vantage Learning was founded way back in the 90s. And we developed that IntelliMetric automated essay scoring engine back then. I always pause when I mention that IntelliMetric was developed in the 90s because I don't think I had a computer then. So I'm just amazed that this technology is in existence in the 90s. But it was created in the 90s, and ever since it has been employed in a variety of different ways. So for example, the United Nations uses IntelliMetric to evaluate writing samples for its applicants. For over a decade, the Graduate Management Admissions Council has utilized IntelliMetric to score the writing portion of the GMAT. The world's largest online retailer, whose name rhymes with Amazon, uses it in their managerial program. And then institutions of higher education utilize it both across the country and internationally to evaluate students' writing proficiency. In the development of IntelliMetric, our company has over 40 patents, all having to do with natural language understanding and linguistics. And some of those technologies you're probably very familiar with. So if you have an iPhone in your pocket, there are 17 Vantage patents in the iPhone alone. If you've ever written in a Microsoft Word document, that little red squiggly line that tells you have a spelling or grammar mistake, that's our technology. So we're sort of technology behind really well-known and everyday used technology that's out there. IntelliMetric is also the engine, the AI engine that powers CorrectEnglish. So you'll be able to see some of that in live view once we launch into that platform. But before we do, I will allow the Arkansas State faculty to take us through their experience using the platform, starting with Dr. Fillowers to give us an understanding of how they came upon CorrectEnglish and how they developed the pilot and why.
Hi, thank you, Jacqueline. And I am also the assessment director for the College of Business here at A-State. And really, this came about because Dr. Fish was also a member of the committee who assessed writing and that was one of our student learning outcomes. And so in our most recent assessments, 2018, our students performed poorly in style and mechanics, in the style and mechanics sections of the rubric that we use for assessment. And so we have, even for years before that, we've had a system of tutors. We have the Writing Center for the University with tutors. We have embedded tutors within the College of Business. We have stressed writing in our classes, and we have had faculty development, events for our faculty to help students to write better, and they're still performing poorly in style and mechanics. And so then in our 2020 assessment, because we really pushed harder on the tutoring aspect, our style got a little better, but our mechanics was still below, our score on that was still below what we meet expectations for our assessment. And so we needed something that would be scalable, because some of the faculty were sending students, a lot of students, to the writing tutors, others were not, but still that's a one-on-one situation there, and it's not immediately accessible and like CorrectEnglish is. And so as part of this group who studies and assesses and makes recommendations, Dr. Fish, I believe, had viewed a presentation maybe that Jacqueline made at a conference, and he said, I found this tool. Let's think about this. We did a lot of research on it. Jacqueline presented it to us, and we thought, let's go with it. Let's do a pilot. And so Dr. Fish did the pilot in his class, as Jacqueline mentioned earlier, and it was very successful, and he's going to tell you about that. And then we're rolling this out, across the College of Business. Psychology has picked it up from our Presentative Learning State, when our on-campus assessment and teaching event. And so it's been great. And so I turn it over to Dr. Fish now to give us the specifics of that.
Okay, thanks, Melody. So this field study that we did took place in the fall and spring semesters of 21 academic year. The students were taking my survey of management information systems in the College of Business, so that this is the obligatory MIS class that all business students have to take. So most of them are not MIS majors, and it's kind of this is a database, this is an ERP system, customer relationship management systems. You give them a little bit of everything, kind of broad. During both semesters, the classes were taught online due to COVID-19 restrictions at Arkansas State. And all sections of the classes were taught in an identical fashion for both fall and spring semesters. All assignments, grading weights, timeframes, lectures, class meetings remained the same for semesters. So we wanted to keep everything equivalent. In my class, I do require essay exams. And Cliff mentioned having 15. Well, right now I'm looking at 2 sections of 30, and I'm having to grade 60 essay exams. And it takes me a long time to do that. But as I think writing is important. I mean, I think a lot of people on the committee that Melody mentioned have a passion for writing, and they know what it can do for students, and they know that it helps develop critical thinking. So in this MIS class, I require 2 exams at 25% apiece. I require a term paper at 25%. I have some other homework that's in more of a cloud environment, but it's not really writing. And then for this last year, I had 2 what we're going to call developmental essays, and these will be scored by the IntelliMetric machine. And each one of those counted 2.5%. The students were required to deal with MIS concepts in the essay exams and term paper, but not the developmental exams. The developmental essay scores dealt inherently with just writing composition, and they can provide us with results that are not commingled with the student's understanding of MIS. The problem, if we start comparing the essay exams and the term paper, is that a student could really have a nicely structured exam and make the arguments, but if they don't understand the MIS concepts, they make the wrong arguments, and I have to subtract that from their grade. So the fact that we're really able to compare in this study essays that really are inherently dealing with writing, we thought would give us a better measure of the efficacy of CorrectEnglish. The 2 developmental essays, as I said, were AI graded. they were turned in as a Word file at a different cloud site. So when they turn that in, it's not at the Correct English site. And the IntelliMetric grading has no way of knowing if the student used Correct English or not. And some of the students chose not to use Correct English. We gave them the option of using Correct English to assist them in the essay and term paper, excluding the first developmental essay, which is really how we established our baseline. Okay. And the fact that some opted in and some opted out gives us an opportunity to compare scores with users and non-users. So, and that's really what the research that we're going to be reporting is, a comparison of the students that used those that did not use it. So here is an example of developmental essay 1. And it was an essay about not quitting, facing challenges in their life. If you look down here, it says, in a well-developed essay, relate the importance of not quitting when facing challenges, as illustrated by the life of somebody successful and as experienced in your life. Include details from both lives and support your discussion. And then it kind of tells them some other ideas on how they're going to be scored. So that was the baseline essay that the students wrote. None of the students used Correct English on this first developmental essay. We hadn't shown it to them yet, and we wanted just to get a baseline of their writing ability. Then developmental essay, which comes towards the end of the semester, after they had worked with Correct English in the essay exam 1, essay exam 2, which were my MIS essays, not the developmental essays, in the term paper. Then we tested it again on developmental essay 2, which was again graded by the IntelliMetric. And this is, again, a kind of a general essay on technology. It says, write an essay explaining technology you have chosen, why it affects our lives. And it was based on, the big effects in our lives, and wants the student to relate that. So those were the two what we call developmental essays. And the students were giving a scoring rubric that they got before they took any of these essays. And there's some constructs: focus and meaning, content and development, organization, language use, voice and style, mechanics, and conversation. And it's scored on a 6-point scale across these 5 constructs, plus it also reports an overall score, again, between 1 and 6. So a perfect score, and 1 or 2 students made a perfect score. Perfect score was a 36. And then I wanted to show you that Correct English, the feedback that they get in this software maps directly to the rubric. And so there is feedback they get on focus, feedback they get on content, organization, style, and grammar. So I show you this. These are some shots, some screenshots, and later on we're going to take you in live to Correct English. But I just wanted to show these to you now so you can see the mapping that I'm talking about. There's a grammar part where here's a work palette where the student's essay is shown. They get feedback on grammar and they get some grammar recommendations. And then they click on this stats button and it gives them feedback on the underlying structure of the, I can't see this thing because maybe that goes a little better. This, it gives them feedback on organization, style, content, and focus. And on this particular student, you can see it's telling him you're good on focus and overall you're okay, but you need work on organization, style, and content. And I'll go in later and show you how the student can address those issues. And so here's the results. We rescaled the 36-point feedback that the students get. I always report my scores to my students on a 100-point score because they just understand that better. And so I went and rescaled it, just whatever they scored, I divided it by 36 and multiplied it by 100. And these are the scores that, you know, the student, it's straightforward and they can understand how they're doing. So if we look at the scores, and after we found out who our users and non-users were, we were able to go back and break out their scores and handle those. So we, in fall 2020, we compared users and non-users. We had 51 who decided to use it, 19 chose not to use it. In the spring of 2021, we had 36 students use it, 18 decide not to use it. And here are their scores on Developmental Essay 1, and then Developmental Essay 2. And then since we were looking for differences on how they performed, we wanted to go ahead and look at their overall class average, because we wanted to know if these differences were caused by differences in scholastic achievement among the students, or were the differences caused by correct English? If we could, you know, get a better handle on that. So the overall class average is what the student had at the end of the semester in my class. And we can see there that, and I'm going to go into some statistical testing, but they ended up being equal across all groups. So we did some statistical testing. And the first question we wanted to know is, did the users improve their scores from Essay 1 to Essay 2? And so we did a paired sample t-test. And in the fall, the students that used it, their average went up from almost 83 to 90, which we show is an 8.8% increase. And the students in the spring went up from an almost 86 to almost a 91. And we show that as a 5.7% increase in their writing ability. Then we looked at the non-users to see if they would have, we thought, well, you know, if you're doing a lot of writing, maybe you improve anyway. So we looked at the non-users and a paired sample t-test, and there was no statistically significant difference between the fall non-users. They remained flat. And statistically speaking, the same thing happened in the spring. They remained flat. And going into the study, we had requested from Jacqueline that they provide us with 2 essays that would score equivalent, you know, in an equivalent fashion. And they helped us select these essay prompts and said, these are the ones that we have data, the students will score equivalent on these 2 tests. And we said, okay, proof's in the pudding, we're going to see. And sure enough, they scored equally. Then we looked at, is there a difference between, as far as the baseline writing skills, were some of these more skilled starting out in their writing ability versus the students that weren't quite as skilled? So for the fall semester, we compared the developmental essay score of the users with the non-users and found no statistically significant difference between these 2 means. So we conclude that they start with equivalent writing skills. And in this group, the non-users actually had a statistically significant larger average than the non-users. So in this group, the non-users had better writing skills at the beginning of the semester as opposed to the users. And then we looked at the results at the end, towards the end of the semester, and we found out here that the users mean is larger at a 94.4% confidence level. I know some people think 5% is the magic number, but we're very, very darn close to that. Something's going on, and I have confidence in that. And then independent sample t-test here showed no difference between them. So here, it appears that these students, they started equal, and the users at the end of the semester had higher writing skills than the non-users. And in the spring, it appears that the non-users started with higher writing skills, but that the users caught them and improved their writing skills to catch them. And then, I'm gonna have to move this. I can't see my screen, hang on. Okay, so then we compared the overall class averages again to make sure that any of these differences was not due to differences in scholastic achievement. And we compared, we did independent t-tests. We found no difference between these two means, and as well on these two means, no statistically significant difference in the means. So our conclusions for the field study: during the fall semester, the users and non-users groups begin with equivalent writing skills based on the developmental 1 results. By the end of the semester, the users scored higher on the developmental essay number 2 than the non-users. Additionally, the users improved their writing performance by 8.8%. And there is no evidence that this improvement in performance can be attributed to differences in scholastic achievement. And then in the spring, we concluded that the non-users have a higher baseline set of writing skills than the students that became users. That by the end of the semester, the user students appears to have caught up with the non-users, as there was no statistically significant difference in developmental essay 2. And during the semester, the users' performance improved 5.7%, while the non-users remains flat. And this improvement cannot be attributed to higher scholastic achievement by the users. So at this point, we'll open it up for any questions that anybody might have on the field study that we conducted.
All right, so we've got Monica Swindle, who jumped into the chat and said, in addition to being AI scored, were their essays also scored by a human instructor as well?
It was completely AI.
Thank you very much. Carol Martin jumps in. Were any of the students ESL? ESL?
Yes, a few were, but most of those students, surprisingly, a lot of those students chose not to use the correct English, and I don't know why. I think that those students just are scared to death of writing. I don't know if they took it to the ESL office that we have for help. I don't have a lot of those. I don't think that those would have changed the results, because I really didn't have that many ESL students. There was but not a lot. It says, how then do you know that their writing skills improved rather than their ability to satisfy the AI? Well, I have confidence that AI, if you look at that IntelliMetric machine, it's used in gauging GMAT scoring. It's used in scoring essays around various subject matters. It's trained. I don't know. I mean, Jacqueline can step in
Yeah, I
Go
was going
ahead.
to jump in and kind of add some clarity. So yeah, IntelliMetric is probably the most studied AES engine out there. There's over 500 studies on IntelliMetric. A lot actually came out of GMAC, to your point. And in fact, obviously, GMAC wants to ensure that that machine is accurate. Just to give you an idea of the accuracy in one of the studies that was conducted for years, the GMAC used IntelliMetric as one scoring aspect for the writing portion. It was a human and the machine. And anytime, then there was a third rater, a chief. And anytime the machine and the human did not align, then that would be brought to the chief for a final decision. Because over the last decade, every time that instance occurred, every single time they decided that the machine was accurate and the human was not. So because of that, the GMAC is actually looking to only utilize the machine for scoring and do away with the human aspect altogether. But happy to share kind of research and data on IntelliMetric. And to Dr. Fish's point, the machine is trained. So each prompt that was utilized is actually trained by hundreds and hundreds of actual student writing and actual human scores to train that model. So there's a lot of research and information that I can provide around that. In relation to ESL as well, the machine does perform extremely well in relation to ESL students. And there was a study done that actually identified 6 different cohorts and deemed that it did not favor or disfavor any of those different cohorts of students. So I can certainly share some research for the attendees as well.
So you're saying it's really hard to game the system.
Yeah, really hard to game the system, exactly.
I keep throwing those. Go ahead, Dr. Fish.
I had one student who misunderstood the assignment and wrote a different essay and turned it in and got a 0. And so this thing knows if the right subject matter is being discussed. And they've come a long way. I'll say that. Any other questions before we move on?
Yeah. Keep on throwing those questions into the chat. Also, I am monitoring whether any of the attendees are, raising their hands, because we can certainly allow you guys to talk, unmute you, do all of that. We want this to be a conversation, so feel free to raise your hands and we can keep the discussion going.
And just as a reminder on that, the question on the AI, which is, I had that question when we first started this. We were, both Melody and Paula and I were all healthy skeptics on some of this, but we said, let's, the proof is in the pudding. Let's just see, let's just do a study. That's why we did the pilot study. But as I stated, the IntelliMetric does not know whether or not the student used CorrectEnglish, because they're just turning in a Word file and that is downloaded from, in edited. I'll show you a little bit later. It can be edited right there in Word. So we're going to go on. Let me move on, see if I can get let me see if I can get this slide to move. There we go. Okay. So we wanted to go ahead and do a satisfaction survey to see if the students like this at the end of the semester. And so we put an online survey up, and we used a survey that was developed by R.A. Westbrook, a rating scale for measuring product and service satisfaction, Journal of Marketing, which is the top rated journal in marketing. And this thing, I didn't report for this slideshow the reliabilities, but it has outstanding reliabilities. We're writing a paper on this, and we report some of that boring stuff in the paper, but yet we don't report reliabilities here, but they are strong. But I thought we would just look at some histograms, because that's, a good way to look at this. So it was a 7-point scale, terrible and delighted on the first one. How do you feel about CorrectEnglish software? You can tell the first semester students liked it, skewed to the right. Second semester in the spring, skewed it skewed to the right, not quite as strong. I really think last spring there was some fatigue starting to set in with online teaching. And I think that could maybe attribute to some of that, but basically they look the same. You got one disgruntled student that didn't like it, but most of them liked it. And the second item on the scale, how satisfied have you been with Correct English? Again, very strong towards satisfaction, both semesters. And then what extent does Correct English meet your needs? Again, strong, little bit more variance in the spring semester, but pretty strong agreement. And we concluded that the students, and the feedback we got from the students was overall they liked it. Some felt it was too picky, on the grammar, and they just kind of got frustrated with that, but most of them liked it. Did the students have access to this program for their other classes? Yes. Once they set up an account, they have access to use it in their other classes as well.
I'll just interject to our licenses are 12-month access. So students who have access to it have access to it for a full year. And they're not tied to a particular course. So they can be using that platform for any class that they're enrolled in. And in fact, the writing resources are embedded within the platform are cross-disciplinary. So there's lots of support no matter what class they're taking or what major they're in.
And then a question said, did your English department decide to use this software as well? Melody, do you know of?
I don't know that English is using it. I know there's a pretty widespread pilot going right now in psychology for it, but I don't know about English.
Yeah, and we've been in talks with the vice provost there in terms of providing access to every student so that every course, it could be a integrated technology in Canvas so that students can access it in any course. So we're looking to do that too.
And when I had access to the library to help me pick out the prompt that we were going to use. And there is a library of essay prompts that can be scored automatically. And I thought to myself, if I have somebody teaching freshman English where they're having to write and write and write and write, and you don't want to wear out your teachers with all this grading, that those are pretty inexpensive scoring mechanisms, and you could really work your students hard and not wear out your professors. I just think it would be a really great tool for freshman English. It says, is this software available in a mobile app, Jacqueline?
Yeah, so we do not have a fully mobile compatible application. We do have what's called like an overlay. It's primarily the grammar feedback tool that can kind of overlay if you're texting or sending an email, but it doesn't have all of the features of the Correct English platform. Our kind of philosophy is that students really shouldn't be writing papers on their phone. So we keep it really to a laptop and tablet and computer environment.
Carol asked a good question. Grammar usually falls into a right or wrong answer. How did the style element work?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I'm going to demonstrate that. And they do receive style feedback on their grammar check. So I'm going to demonstrate to you how that works. They always have the choice, though. Sometimes it comes with a specific recommendation. Sometimes it does not have one. And I always, I told my students, I said, this is going to be like your 10th grade sophomore, the toughest English teacher you had in 10th grade. I said, it's going to be really picky. And if you disagree on style or on any part of it for that matter, if you're adamant about it, you can always ignore it. You don't have to choose to use it. So, but having said that, I said, there's times when I disagree with it on the grammar check, and I will, if I'm putting some of my stuff in there just to check it, and I'll get out Google or get out my phone and check it on my phone and go in and get definitions. And I'm going, wow, it was right. It's been right for me at times when I disagreed with it, but I thought I better check that out. So I'll demonstrate it for you here in a second. I think that's where we're going next. Any other questions? None? Let's get in, then I'll take you into the demonstration. So I'm going to do another share, and so this is my Correct English, Correct English sign-in page. Is everybody seeing that? Okay. So I'm going to sign in. And it takes me to this, to the environment. And you can see this part of the environment is pretty similar to a lot of Word or editing documents. Kind of looks like Word. So I think students are pretty comfortable with that. And then over here is your feedback area that it's going to give you. And so you can actually, if you want to, the student, and I demonstrate this and show them, I say, you can type your entire essay in here and just directly write in there, and you can save it. You have space you're in their cloud. So and they've given you server space in their cloud. So you can just save it here in Correct English and work on it if you want. But personally, I'm so accustomed to working in Word that I prefer to do my work in Word and then upload it and get feedback from this Correct English. So I'm going to go in here to Document Center, and you have all these options to importing and exporting documents. So I'm going to do an import from a Word that I've saved to my desktop. And this is from a student from a previous semester this was even before we started using this particular piece of software. Yes. Let me, it's going to make me fill out that field. Test 33. Okay, so it's saving a copy to their cloud. So then now it's brought it in, and I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to click on Fix My Doc. And I tell my students, it ain't going to fix your doc for you, but it can start to now check everything and start to give you feedback on it. And I don't know if y'all can read this. I'm wondering if I might need to make some of the font larger.
That's better.
Can everybody read that? Okay. So this is an essay from 2020 when we first had to pivot and go online during COVID. So it's, and I forgot what the essay prompt was, but it was an essay from my MIS class. And I think it was discussing different e-commerce type models, business to business, business to consumer, that sort of thing. And so here's the grammar check, which they go to first. And it gives feedback. So this first one, it's just making a comment. It says you're using an informal expression. And because the student used know-how. And it suggested knowledge or skill. So if you want to use a more formal expression than know-how, you could select knowledge and it changes it for you. Then the second comment, it says you're using a wordy expression. So I click on that. And kind of gives them some pointers. It says, unless the phrase provides particular emphasis, consider eliminating it, revise to a sentence like I will explain. And it's suggesting it is again, and I'm going to look at this sentence. In the B2C space, the most frequent mannequin, I don't know why this guy chose mannequin. I'm asking for business models. The most frequent mannequin, once more, is the place the B2C corporations are presenting. So this is not a well-written paper, but I'm going to choose again, and it makes that. Now here's one with style choice. Somebody asked about that. No, it's informal expression. Hang on a sec. Let me go back to style choice. There's a spelling concern. It says e-commerce is probably better spelled like that. That could be, I'm going to go ahead and change that. Here's another one with style choice, stock phrase. It says, generally speaking, no advice available here. So if the student wants to keep it and wants to use generally speaking, you can click on ignore and just keep it. But see, it starts to go, it gets pretty picky, and it goes through the whole paper. So I tell the students, it's going to get pretty tedious and you might get frustrated with it. But if you take most of what it says, you're going to have better grammar on your paper. So I've got 2 questions. Does it catch and flag that mannequin as not making sense? It did not. And, again, I don't know why the student used that, but.
And I'll just interject. So Correct English, which is different than IntelliMetric. IntelliMetric is trained to a prompt. If a student is writing off topic, IntelliMetric is going to catch that. So Correct English, the AI that's on the back end, it's going to identify grammar and mechanical and stylistic, and then give you some feedback on the demands of writing, but it doesn't necessarily look at the content. So if a student is supposed to write about the War of 1812 and instead wrote about their summer vacation, but they wrote a well-done paper about their summer vacation, this is not going to identify that as being off topic in any way. So that's why mannequin wouldn't necessarily have been caught in Correct English.
Because, correct English doesn't know the topic of the essay. Yeah. It's just looking at the structure of the essay. Right. I think Jacqueline answered that question. Okay, so, but here's, in my opinion, what really sets this, and full disclosure, we don't work for these guys and we don't make a penny for them. We were just pleased with the results. But I tell my student, I said, here's what sets it apart from Grammarly and some of these other things, is I can click on stats and get this feedback on the underlying structure of my essay. And you can't do that with these other writing deals. And so this student is saying, you know what, you got problems with organization, style, and content. Your focus is okay in your overall. So now what does the student do? And when we first got this, the question came up, well, is this thing going to write the rest of their paper for them? Is it, they were concerned. We don't want AI writing their paper for them. And we didn't want that either. And so the answer to that is no, it's not going to write them, but it's going to give them ideas on how to fix it. So you go to help, and then you go down here, and again, and it says view writing. So I'm going to click on that. And it goes through all the different writing types that this can give help with. So emails and letters, narrative writing. If you're in sales and marketing, cold call, contact letters, thank you letters, marketing copy, follow-up letter, agendas, customer service apology, response, thank you letter. It's got a lot of different types that it can help you with. And I tell my students, I say, really the closest thing on your essay exams and the essays that you're getting is an analytic essay. And so let's look at analytic essay and see what it tells you to do. So you click on that and it discusses what an analytic essay is and what is analytical writing, and goes into the writing process. Then it even gives you a model, an example of one of these, and has different pop-ups that tells you how to, style your individual body paragraphs. I mean, I go through with my students and we kind of review what I'm expecting in an essay. And it was heartening to know that when I looked at material online and I said, it's been a long time since I've taken an English comp course, but I was doing it correctly. You have this intro paragraph that funnels down to a thesis, which is your last sentence typically in your introduction. And then you have support paragraphs. And then, then we dig into a paragraph. Here's, your first sentence in a paragraph. And then you have to have sentences that support that. And then you have to have empirical examples buttressing your arguments. And I tell them exactly what I expect in an essay. And this stuff is, when I saw this stuff, I'm going, wow, I'm on target. It made me feel better, because being a business professor, not a lot of business professors give essay exams, quite frankly. I learned to teach at a liberal arts school, so that's the way I was taught to teach, and I was pleasantly surprised. But here's really where it helps the student: revision tips. And so now, here's some ideas on style. You click on this, it says, check your document for grammar errors, avoid slang, abbreviations. Here's a link you can go to if you must use abbreviations. It'll tell you how to do it. Reread your document. Is your writing concise, direct, and objective? Here's a checklist. Use a variety of sentence lengths and types. Use several short, simple sentences to convey complex ideas. Use active voice. You can click on here and it'll give you examples of what active is. And it goes through again on content, organization. And so the student can go through here, and I tell my students, you can edit it right here, or you can download it and edit it in Word as you're going along with this, but you need to edit it. You need to start looking at these changes that this is telling you to make. And once you've gone through it and made those changes, then resubmit it and see if you cannot get green lights on all of this. And I'll show you a student that I've got. Let me see, Bejo Doe. So here's a student. She wrote a better paper. We look at her stats. She's got green on everything. And I tell them, okay, turn it in. And then at least you know that you've got correct structure for your essay, and that you've looked at your grammar, you've looked at your structure, you're making your arguments right, or you're making arguments, you're buttressing those arguments, you've got a conclusion, and they've got to have, in my class, they've got to have the right MIS concept to score well, but this shows them what kind of structure they have and that they're ready to turn the thing in. So that's all that we have for the presentation. If anybody has any questions, we'll be happy to take a look at it.
So a question came in: what is the software basing the evaluation feedback on focus and content? So it's looking at sentence structure, in terms of focus and content and how it's presented, right? But not necessarily about what the content is on. If you want something that's going to really evaluate accurately on a content level, that's when you're looking at an IntelliMetric modeled exercise, which is what Arkansas used for that benchmark assessment. The benefit of CorrectEnglish is you're going to get the feedback on basic structure of the domains of writing, but you're not limited to what assignment you can have students work on in here. It doesn't matter. It's completely what I like to call promptless or prompt agnostic, so that you can really utilize it no matter what assignment. So again, it's looking more at the structure.
Let's look at what the revision on content is.
Oh, great idea.
Okay, so it says let's go in here and look. Content, does your introduction orient your reader to the topic and thesis? Number 2, do you have an analytical, strongly worded thesis at the end of the introduction? Does your essay present a series of supporting arguments as outlined in your thesis? Do you analyze evidence and quotations and integrate them into your argument? And do you synthesize your argument in a fresh way in your conclusion? So it's kind of, the content, I think, is, sometimes I call it structure, but the content, I think, is, the how it all, again, how it's, in my opinion, it's how it's structured and how it flows. And are you doing these things that I've asked you to do with the thesis? Are you bringing in supporting evidence, that sort of thing? So that's, does that answer I think that answers your question, Monica, on content. Hopefully. Let me know. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Another thing just to note, Dr. Fish, if you go into the main page of CorrectEnglish, just want to show that there is multilingual support. So if you do have ESL students, the grammar feedback that students can that are receiving, they can receive that feedback into 9 different languages. So they're receiving feedback on how to improve their English writing in a manner that's most understandable to them.
So here is, my Spanish is horrible, but so I'm not even, I'm going to butcher these words.
So, but even if you expand one of the drop downs there, there you go. The description is now provided in Spanish. We partner also with Florida International University, and this they went nuts over this part.
And also, I didn't mention these because I don't use these.
Yep.
Since it is on a platform in the cloud, you can set this up where, for example, if you're an English professor and you want to work online with the students and read what they're doing, then you can, there's a comments to where the professor can make comments, or if you have teams, they can comment on the different pieces of work. And then you can also have some sharing on teams as well. But my students, I didn't use these because my students write these as individuals, and I provide feedback on the term paper, but I do that basically through email and speaking with them and reading what they send me. They're supposed to get it in good shape before they send me the copy for feedback.
Yeah. And students can also share with each other. So if you're doing any peer review exercise, that's all has the ability within here. And then another feature that we didn't talk about specifically is plagiarism detection. So that is something that you can turn on or turn off, depending on how your institution is utilizing or how they're solving plagiarism. But that is a feature that's in here, and students would have the ability to run a plagiarism detection before they submit as well.
Any other questions?
Kelly, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Did you ever take any of your exams and run them through and compare what you grade, how you grade to how CorrectEnglish would have graded it? Just to check your grading?
No. Number one, again, because it's faster, you know how it is at the end of the semester
Yeah.
And if you've got 60 of those to grade in a week or 4 or 5 days, I didn't have time to do that. I had to get my grades out, and I can grade an essay fast enough to where I know if they're doing some of these things that this has given me feedback on. And since, I looked at, and one of the reasons I wanted to get in here is my classes were getting so large that I wanted to see if there was any way that I could get my essays graded on this. And I can, but it takes about a minimum of 500 essays to train it. I mean, this is an artificial neural network. So Vantage will let you do that. It was fairly expensive, and it would take 500 of the same essay prompt. And I like to vary my essay prompts from semester to semester to keep the students honest, so I can't give the same essay question. It would take me 2 to 3 years of giving the same essay question to get one of these trained. That's why you really see that IntelliMetric on these big tests like the GMAT, where they've got thousands that they can train the thing on, rather than now. I know University of Colorado is doing some research on some of their big classes where they're trying to get it to where they can use this on some of their big classes, but I wasn't able to do that. So to answer your question, Paula, I never did do that because just of time constraints at the end of the semester, and it wouldn't really help me grade any faster.
Okay.
Yeah, and just as a anecdotal, so Kent State is actually doing kind of a pilot study right now, and they're having human scores as well as machine scoring to kind of do that kind of comparison. So we'll be able to kind of share the results of that as well once they're completed. But the CorrectEnglish, the students view the statistics, it's a color-coded score. On the back end, that is converted into a numerical score. It's actually 2 decimal place scores that could be, kind of used or converted. But again, whether or not the student is on topic, that's basically the biggest factor that won't be flagged in a CorrectEnglish engine, which will be flagged in the IntelliMetric engine.
All right. Well, we just hit our hour, and I am taking a look. I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm not seeing any hands raised at this point. So I'm going to say thank you so much to our friends from Arkansas State and from Vantage. If this is software that you guys think that your school might be interested in, I'm sure that Jacqueline would love to talk to you. I am posting her email right there in the chat. If any of you want to reach out to me, give me some feedback, give me some thoughts, anything like that, there's my email. I've only been with MCCA for about 3 months now. So I am looking for as much feedback as I can possibly get as we look forward to 2022. All of this is going to be, we've got this recording, so I'm also going to put this out in an email to everybody. It's also going to be posted to MCCA's YouTube page. But before we get to 2022, we have the MCCA convention coming up in just 3 weeks. 3 weeks from today, we will all be in Branson together. It seems really hard to believe. If you haven't registered yet, please do so. If you have staff members who are thinking about registering, our cutoff is a week from Friday. Like I said, it seems hard to believe. Just today, I locked in our wellness instructor for Thursday morning. We're getting ready to package up the swag bags. A sponsor called me up just yesterday and said, I'm not too late, right? I can still sign up. And just to give you an idea of our numbers, let me refresh this page. We are sitting at 442, nope, not 442, 443 people who have registered for the convention. And about 54 of those are virtual. So we're looking at about 390 by the end of the week. We'll definitely be at 400 in-person registrants. So it's going to be really, really exciting. So if you haven't signed up, please do. If you have staff members who haven't signed up, get on it. Our deadline's coming up, and I can't wait to see everybody. Thank you again, Jacqueline, Dr. Ruby, Dr. Fish, Dr. Philhours, and thank you to everybody who joined us. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.